Hello, I'm Bruno Zumbo. I'm a professor and distinguished university scholar at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada. And today I want to speak to you about the Paragon UBC Professorship of Psychometrics and Measurement. It's the Paragon UBC Professor of Psychometrics and Measurement. It's a mouthful. It's a title I've held since 2015, and I want to talk about the impact of that professorship and the funding, the whole program that came around it. This is part of a larger conversation that we'll be having on February 12th and launching of this video and sharing with people from around the world who are attending on the 12th about the vision of where we're going in the future and the impact. This is partly based today on a report that I released in the fall called Looking Back, Looking Ahead, Outcomes, Impacts, and Next Steps of the UBC-Paragon Partnership. In the comments section of this video, I'll show a link to that report and to these slides, so you'll be able to have both of them. So in the next while, a very brief while, I want to give you a feel for, what are the outcomes? What are the impacts? What are next steps? And tell you a little bit about a very unique arrangement called the UBC-Paragon Partnership. In 2015, Paragon Testing Enterprises, a subsidiary of UBC, entered into a partnership with the University of British Columbia, the Faculty of Education, and the Office of the Provost. That first agreement was for 5 years, with September 2015 to the end of August 2020. In the spring of 2020, the agreement was renewed for an additional 4 years, starting in April 2020. The agreement is really quite exciting. It is unique, and I'll talk some more about that in a moment. It's really achieved some very exciting things about graduate training, which is important as an important mission of the program, of the initial program and of the ongoing program, is to enhance UBC's standing as a global leader in research and graduate training in the statistical science of measurement. And it's also meant to expand and enhance Paragon Testing's Test Research and Development Division. In 2015, Paragon was somewhere in the range of about 5 years old. They had a very active test R&D program. Early on in the development of Paragon, the CEO, Dr. Don Waring, brought me in an advisory role as a professor at UBC, who's done a lot of, spent now 30 years as an active researcher in the area of the statistical and psychometric models of measurement, as well as the conceptual foundational issues that I talk about, see a bit later, some of my particular interests. The agreement, the UBC-Paragon Partnership, has as part of it the appointment of the Paragon UBC professor, myself, and I am tasked with particularly in 2015, establishing, creating the agreement. How are we going to enact it? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Not to mention all the administrative matters of funding and all those sorts of things. Not report writing, progress reports, hitting targets, all these exciting ideas of running a very large. The first 5 years was a $1.8 million investment between the two organizations. And that was for postdocs, research scientists, research support, travel for conferences, and you'll see in a little bit the sort of things that we do. The Dean of Education, Dr. Bly Frank, in 2015, I think said it very well. You'll see it here in the slide when he really says this partnership, the UBC-Paragon Partnership, will make UBC's Faculty of Education a Canadian Centre of Excellence, drawing on visiting scholars and scientists to collaborate with researchers and interact with graduate students in the field. And we've been able to do that. In fact, what Dean Frank was trying to share at the time was just the establishment of the program immediately makes this a center of excellence. And that our ambition and our desire is to become global leaders in this area, both in terms of research, in terms of graduate training, and graduate training thought of as a bit from a large perspective, training specialists in the statistical science of measurement, PhD students and master's students, postdocs who are specialists in the technical statistical elements of psychometrics and the mathematics of measurement, including large data science, computational aspects, but also training specialists in allied fields across the province of British Columbia at various universities, in government agencies, and also being a resource to individuals across Canada as we grow this network and this hub at UBC, reaching out, drawing individuals in. The idea, though, very quickly is to set our eyes on being global leaders in research, graduate training, dissemination of knowledge, working with professionals, working with Paragon testing, but we also work with the ministry, the BC Ministry of Health. I've continued some connections with Statistics Canada, which is for those of you who are watching from outside of Canada, is our National Bureau of Statistics, as well as advising individuals like Health Canada. I play a role with the World Health Organization, advising some individuals around psychometric issues in that context. So really we are to become and grow and aspire to even be larger than just a Canadian element. That's pretty much upon the establishment, is to show our global impact. And I think we've had it. I think we can see that. And I say that with no humility whatsoever. The other thing about that I find interesting about this partnership is, first of all, this really is the vision and inspiration of Dr. Don Waring, who's the CEO of Paragon Testing. He had a vision for this. He reached out and began to collaborate and work with Dean Bly Frank, who was very receptive, really saw his own vision for how this fit in. And these two leaders began to create a model for research collaboration and partnership between university researchers and industry in a way that brings mutual benefit. Paragon is a subsidiary of the University of British Columbia, which in some ways makes that much easier. But I don't think we need to worry about that right now for the moment. I think the most important part of this is that you have two leaders who really have aspects to bring to it, looking at the mutual benefit of this partnership. The partnership between UBC and Paragon Testing is the first of its kind in the Faculty of Education, and is unique in the world for testing companies like Paragon Testing, which is a subsidiary of UBC, but it is unique in that sense. I mean, it's not the only testing company in the world that's subsidiary to a larger, to a university. One can look in the UK, can look at, particularly in the UK is probably the other best example, in places like in the United States, in the Midwest. You can see that there are connections, but this is rather unique. It really is rather unique, I think, and rather unique for a Faculty of Education in the world, in the way that the collaboration comes about for mutual benefit. Let me give you a few outcomes very quickly, because we don't want to spend, you can see, you can dwell on them yourself by looking at the slides. We've had a very busy time. Student funding is a key part of it. 24 MERM, that's Measurement, Evaluation, and Research Methodology graduate students. That's our graduate program. A Senate-approved master's and PhD program, going back, oh gosh, probably nearly 25 years here at UBC, graduating outstanding leaders around the world who are at universities, industry, government in Canada, the United States, in Australia, in the UK. You can find individuals in Hong Kong, Taiwan, you can, and to name just a few. And so our PhD students are MERM, Measurement, Evaluation, Research Methodology grad students, were funded, 24 grad students were funded for somewhere between 1 and 4 years. We funded grad students. I'm very excited on the far top left there that during the summer of COVID, I set aside some research money that I was going to use for travel to conferences, supporting colleagues to travel, and myself. And of course, we adhered to safety and did not travel to these conferences. Conferences were also postponed. And so we took this money and I funded and I added some more, moving some numbers around in the budget, and funded an additional 18 graduate students in the Department of Educational Counseling, Psychology, and Special Education. That's the Department of ECPS. I remember speaking to Dean Frank about this and to the then department head of ECPS, Dr. Shelley Emo, and we were very excited about my wanting to make sure that we did this. And these are students in addition to MERM students. Some of them were the MERM graduate students in the department, but also graduate students in various areas in the department and in the faculty of education, from language and literacy education to MERM to special education to school psychology to human development. We funded grad students for the summer to offset the impact of COVID and really to support their research, all of it applied measurement, psychometrics, writ large. It certainly captures within it. It's certainly part of what we do, but I think it's important to bring it in. Our postdocs, I want to say a few words about our postdocs, and at the moment, to date, there are 5 postdocs, 2 at the moment, working with myself and with a colleague of mine. And we've had others, and you'll see me reference to our postdocs and the funding for our grad students is beyond a doubt the most important impact of the partnership. And it's fed such wonderful developments in theoretical psychometric work, applied psychometric work in various fields, including language assessment and testing that supports the work of Paragon testing. The grad students, the postdocs, is really a tremendous contribution. We've had a vibrant training program in there, including some pre-doctoral. Together, it looks like we've had about, I did a last count, 15 what was called highly qualified personnel by Canadian granting agency definitions, postdocs, PhD students that were trained during the partnership to date at this point. And by trained as the Paragon professor at UBC, this work fell upon me. So nearly, all of the highly qualified, the postdocs were supervised by me. I'm sharing a postdoc right now with a colleague of mine, Dr. Ed Kroc, but that's a brand new initiative. We've been, a lot of this, what I'm reporting here is what's come out from this work that I've been leading. Of course, working with a lovely and amazing network of grad students, postdocs, visiting scholars that have worked with me. In terms of grants, we've been quite busy in terms of national grants and international grants. Some of them with myself as the lead, and some of them with myself as the co-principal investigator. Very active in terms of scholarly output, publications, books, provided addresses, and stuff. I want to show you here a few examples. I'm mindful of the time, of 3 lovely examples of very recent theses that have been completed under my supervision. PhD thesis, Dr. Nathan Roberson on the measurement of social belonging in schools and its connection to migration. Nathan really did some cutting edge work there, bringing in the immigration and migration literature from his backgrounds in international relations and political science, geography, bringing that into measurement and bringing it in, looking at that, approaching it from some Bayesian multivariate models. Nathan's a tremendous scholar. Dr. Michelle Yu Chen, her wonderful work on the impact of negatively keyed items on the assessment of unidimensionality. Of course, if we're going to score a test or a scale or a measure to one score, or to more than one separately, we need to be able to assess that unidimensionality. She looked at this very complex idea of what if you have alongside both positively and negatively worded items, so let's say it's a psychosocial measure and you have I am sad alongside Another set of items are things like I feel happy. And you can see this sort of what we call negatively keyed components to that beautiful work. And Dr. Mauricio Coronel Villalobos is the most recent PhD student I've worked with, and he did some wonderful work on the impact of scoring and response format on he refers to as electronic surveys, but it's bringing in the era of digital technology. What I was excited by Mauricio's work, the reason I want to bring it up to you, is that he really expanded our thinking in the field of measurement in terms of homogeneity, item bias. When we looked at item bias for sexual orientation or gender minorities, instead of just binary gender. That may seem like a small step in some areas of the social science. It isn't in the field of measurement. And he's got some exciting findings papers that are going to be out under review very soon. We've just been doing, he defended not long before Christmas sometime. And so I think it's actually around November. And some papers are going to be out at journals, leading journals very soon around this, both response formats and this area there. You can see how this kind of cutting edge, bringing in different disciplines, and how we're trying to foster in the group. And what I'm trying to encourage is to really bring a multidisciplinary lens, but also a deep sense of rigor. And Michelle's was a series of simulation studies. Nathan worked with the PISA data, the international PISA data, looking at school sense of social belonging in schools. And Mauricio did collected data in different response formats using basically these sort of technology and multimedia approaches to creating surveys and survey responses. You'll see here a list of projects that were under my supervision. This is just a small list. There's a much larger one over the time period. Karen wrote it, actually taking on a problem that came out of her work in industry and in the testing industry, but also at Paragon testing, looking at item parameter drift, how difficulty or discrimination can shift over time when an item from an item bank is used for a period of time, and how does one investigate that? Really lovely work. And applying sort of calibration and equating linking methods. Pamela Wojciech was a visiting scholar, important thing, who came from Spain, was a PhD student at University of, I think it was Autonomous University in Madrid. If I get that wrong, forgive me, Pam. And she'd come originally from Paraguay to Spain, and then here, finished her PhD working here, her supervisor in Spain, as a longtime friend of mine and colleague. She came here, got some more experience working on one of the things that we do extremely well, which is really thinking about the heterogeneity in samples, complex organizations of samples. It's not assuming that everyone's exchangeable with the other necessarily. Diff, bias, and measurement and variance, whatever you want to call it. Heterogeneous modeling, complex mixture models, all of this comes into this lovely problem of thinking about complexity of both samples and tasks. Pamela came here, finished her dissertation, working with me, and on adding that kind of work to her dissertation work. Outstanding. She stayed on as a postdoc and is currently working with me, funded through the Paragon Agreement, and also, in fact, in part, through a fellowship with the BC Ministry of Health, looking at health measurement and looking at patient-reported outcomes. So you see, we're coming at it from a different points of view. The right-hand side, you can see a sample of our former postdocs and grad students, individuals like Dr. Ed Kroc, who's actually a colleague of mine in the MERM program in the Faculty of Education. He's actually trained as a mathematician. He's an analyst. So he was a pure mathematician who moved over his time while doing his studies towards issues in psychometrics and measurement. Keep that name in mind. You're going to see tremendous strides in the field from Ed Kroc. He's a world-class thinker and brings in some really fresh ideas into the field. Dr. Arwa Alkalaf, she finished her PhD with me and now is a professor at King Abdulaziz University in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. doing exciting work there. Dr. Oscar Overa-Stevia is a former PhD and a former postdoc, and is now an assistant professor at the University of Washington in the College of Education in Seattle. And Dr. Nathan Roberson, who you saw me mention earlier, left our program and was an assessment specialist and policy analyst at the OECD in Paris. Really prestigious position to have, and has very recently moved to SMU at the Center for Educational Excellence at Simon Fraser University here. And Dr. Julie Wei, who is a former postdoc, is now a senior research analyst, learning analytics in the Faculty of Arts at UBC. You'll see here too that some funding went towards additional financial support for travel, national, international conferences for our graduate students, also supporting them in terms of developing their computational skills. Not everyone, some of them working with faculty members to build interactive web tools using R and Shiny or Jamovi as well. And lovely stuff. Those tools have become part of our in many of our graduate courses. So they're actually developing tools, learning, testing them, and then these then become resources for the advanced graduate courses we're teaching and the introductory graduate courses that we're teaching. A little bit about the impact of the research arising from the UBC-Paragon partnership. This is a snapshot of the readership statistics, citation and readership, for a sample of my publications. It's hard to do this kind of thing for all of my papers during that time period. We were very productive during that time, but this gives you a sense of, during this time period, the work that's coming out, you're getting a sense of where the readership is in these different parts of the world. We've not been able to penetrate the Greenland there in the north of that market yet, but I'm sure we're going to persuade one of the outstanding scholars in Greenland that they need to be reading and citing our kind of work. Let's attempt at humor on a video. Let me say a few words about the collaborations with Paragon, because it's about this synergy. It's about an overused word, but it really is about this mutual benefit. You'll see a sample of publications resulting from collaborations with Paragon staff. All of them are outstanding. I particularly shine a light on the last one with Michelle Chen and I, and Dr. Liu in 2020 in NSEC measurement. This work emerged out of a problem that started at Paragon when they were in 2015, when they were doing a designation report for the federal government for their language assessment. In it, a complicated problem emerged on how to do a particular kind of bias analysis in tasks like reading, like speaking or writing, where they're not a group of multiple choice tasks. How do you actually do this bias analysis? How do you deal with the matching, etc.? Well, I came up with a solution in 2015 that worked very well for the designation, and in fact, we built on it, presented some conferences, different stages of it, and this sort of propensity score method by Michelle Yen and I appeared in 2020 in NSEC measurement. It was a really lovely piece of work. Same thing happened recently this summer when doing a redesignation of the same notion. I had to deal with a matter of large numbers of groups, and again, I came up with a method, tested it, we used it in the report. Very good news. It was very well received at IRCC in the federal government. What the exciting thing about it that came out of that was that we're now presenting conferences and planning some more research with some members of the technical research staff at R&D, Michelle Chen, Taylor Asbury, Locke, Chow, whose name you'll see on the right-hand side, doing more work on it and presenting conferences with an eventual notion of publication. So you can see the interplay between the problems posed from the field and the science, and how the two kind of feed each other. It was an early bit of advice I got from a very distinguished professor of statistics at Princeton by the name of John Tukey, Professor Tukey Jones. Advice to a group of us early on in my career was work with real data as well as theory. he said, find that interplace and you'll find inspiration. And you'll see that if you look at Tukey's career, it was very much that case. Bell Labs, ETS, other places that he worked. And he brought that during his theoretical development. And in some ways, in some modest ways, I'm not Tukey, I would like to, in fact, model some of what individuals like Tukey did. You can look at the intersection. You can see how, in fact, problems that are being faced by industry, by researchers, and how that feeds your theoretical mathematical work, and that furthermore, how your theoretical mathematical work feeds that. And there is, that's very exciting. It's not the only kind of work that I do or that we do in the group. Some of it is purely theoretical, motivated by advancement in theory and in the philosophy of an approach, involving philosophers of science and others. Some of it involves computer scientists, engineers, mathematicians. But there's also this interplay. So it's a melange of all of this that I think is very important, that at least from my career and how we've gone on here at UBC. Again, some collaboration with Paragon testing in terms of knowledge mobilization, collaborative research projects, dealing with some real practical hands-on issues, concurrent calibration, minimum sample size issues. And there's also knowledge dissemination and exchange. And so, there's workshops, seminars, the research staff at Paragon will be involved, but also it's about creating a learning community at Paragon. When I listen to the CEO, take direction from the CEO, Dr. Waring, what Don will say is, it's very healthy to have an environment in which the staff are being engaged in recent ideas. And that's not just the technical psychometric staff. I work with people in marketing, getting to understand some of the recent issues. These are very bright people. If you can present it in a way that is not overly laden with jargon or with unnecessary mathematics, these very bright individuals catch, work onto it, and in fact, begin to bring this into their own ideas, begin to understand. And so this, there's this culture within Paragon where we actually try and bring in new ideas and sometimes not so new ideas in assessment and testing, but also their interaction with our grad students, our postdocs, immensely positive. I think but it's based on leadership by individuals. It's based on patience. It's based on communication. It's based on trust. All of these. It's a relationship. It's a relationship, and that relationship has to be fostered, has to be nurtured, and in that context, you get these exciting things like this conference presentations. Plus, in the bottom right-hand corner, I bring 30 plus years of experience as a professor in the field of psychometrics, and I used to be purely a theoretician. And I didn't really think at all about applied problems and wasn't motivated by them. I was motivated by theoretical ideas, mathematical ideas, philosophical ideas, and I wrote extensively about that. But over the years, I saw myself moving and looking at it and working with different organizations around the world, the large testing companies around the world. I've been in an advisory capacity once or twice. Statistics Canada, the US Bureau of the Census, Statistics New Zealand, where one of my former grad students went and I worked on problems. The AICPA, the accountants in the US, the National Board of Medical Examiners, Medical Council of Canada, organizations in Hong Kong, organizations in Taiwan, often through colleagues and graduates, former grad students and collaborators, where you learn from these different environments. We get drawn into a problem, a research problem. It's very exciting. It feeds our thinking, we feed their thinking. Some relationships are very long ones, some of them are short ones because you're working on a problem and it's you're sort of a visitor into it. But if they also come here, that's the whole notion, is to build this exchange, this culture of the generation of knowledge, being this really inherent curiosity among our grad students, among our postdocs, among my colleagues who want to participate in this, and it's very exciting work. Very briefly, looking forward, I'll say more about it in a separate presentation when we gather together as a group. But really building on the successes of the first partnership, a second partnership was established to continue the collaboration, to continue growing the excellence at UBC to have a global impact. You'll see from the map there that we're doing some of it. We're reaching parts of the world. I edit journals. It's a very full life, but it really is a full life and exciting academic life with outstanding people around me. The leadership of the Faculty of Education, Dean Bly Frank has been an immensely supportive dean. For those of us who worked as professors for a long time, when you have one like that, you want to hang on to them forever. Because this sort of work was a priority for the kind of ideas that Bly, I think, that's what I hear him say. He enjoys that, fostering the collaboration, the excellence, the training of graduate students, breaking some of these boundaries that we have, looking at, intersectionality, bringing in this kind of work that I think is important, that's in it, and supporting justice and fairness issues. And that, I think, is a major part of what we work on. Grad student training, postdoc training, supporting the work of Paragon testing, and having, as we support them, they actually support and interact with us. And this is very exciting. Not all of my grad students want to become academics. This is a fantastic way for them to get actual real life and very experience with challenging problems that are being faced on a day-to-day basis in testing companies around the world. Thank you so much for your time. You'll see in an attached video that we're going to be a part of, we're going to see that, in fact, I'm going to take this idea and move it forward to where does the next 4 years look like. Thank you very much.